If you avoid charging your electric bike battery to more than 80% of its capacity and never discharge it below 20%, you can greatly increase its lifespan. This is called the 80-20 rule, and it's widely accepted as fact. But is it worth the trouble and the cost? Stick around and we'll take a deep dive into this question. In this video, I'm not disputing the narrative that following the 80-20 rule will prolong the battery's life. I haven't found any peer-reviewed studies on the subject, but I'm accepting that as proven fact since everybody says it. First, let's look at how complicated it would be to manage your battery for the 80-20 rule. There's a problem right at the start. The inexpensive chargers that are provided with e-bikes don't offer the option of stopping charging at 80%. You plug one end of the charger into an electrical outlet and the other end into the battery's charging port, and there's one or two indicator lights that tell you whether it's charging or whether the charging cycle is complete, and that's it. They don't give you the option of stopping when the charge level reaches 80%. There is a charger on the market that can be adjusted to stop charging at whatever level you choose. It's called a satiator, sold by Grin Technologies. It can charge any type of battery, can be programmed to provide a fast charge if you want, and is waterproof. The only drawbacks are that it's heavy and it's expensive. There are 3 ways an electric bike can tell you the charge level of the battery. All e-bike displays have a bar scale that shows 4 or 5 bars, each bar representing roughly 20 or 25% of the battery's capacity. Some e-bike displays have a percentage readout, which provides a precise charge level. Others have a display that shows the battery's voltage, which is directly related to percentage. This table shows the relationship between voltage and percentage charge level. As you can see, a full charge is 54.6 volts for a 48-volt battery and 42 volts for a 36-volt battery. All e-bike batteries have an electronic battery management system known as the BMS. The BMS turns off the motor before the battery is completely empty. How do you stop charging at the 80% level if you don't have a special charger? If you don't have a special charger, it's not easy to determine the right time to turn it off. About the only way would be to periodically take a voltage reading with a voltmeter and stop charging when it reaches 51.5 volts with a 48-volt battery or 39.6 volts with a 36-volt battery. Not very practical. As for the low end, how do you tell that you've reached 20% when you don't have a display with a percentage readout? For those who don't have a percentage readout but have a voltage readout, they could stop when the voltage reaches 42.1 volts for a 48-volt battery or 32.4 volts for a 36-volt battery. If your display doesn't show voltage but shows 4 or 5 bars, you could stop when it reaches 1 bar. This isn't a precise indicator, though, of the actual voltage. It would be better to determine the voltage by checking constantly with a voltage meter, which wouldn't be very practical. Allow me to play a 45-second commercial. If you already know what it's about, fast forward a minute or so for the rest of the 80-20 discussion. If you like this channel, you can help it thrive, either for free or by spending 30 devalued Canadian dollars and get a lot of entertainment at the same time. The way that costs nothing is to give this video a thumbs up, or by sharing with others, or by subscribing if you haven't already done so. As for the $30 way, by buying my book, Sailor Without a Boat, How I Sailed on Other People's Yachts and Lived to Tell About It. With the 80-20 rule, we'd be using only 60% of the battery's potential range. Let's look at the implications of that. I'll take the example of Andrew, who bought a Pedigo City commuter with a 15 amp hour battery. This bike has a real range of 80 kilometers or 50 miles. For this example, I'll continue with miles. If he adopted the 80-20 rule, he'd still get a decent range of 30 miles, and if push came to shove and he needed to use the remaining 20%, he could get an extra 10 miles. If he never goes for rides of more than, say, 25 miles, he wouldn't have to worry about running out of power. A lot of people use their e-bikes for rides of 10 to 12 miles or less. If that were his case, he could go for several bicycle rides before he has the inconvenience of putting his battery on charge. In that case, the 80-20 rule wouldn't be a problem for him. However, instead of selecting the 15 amp hour battery when he bought his bike, he could have chosen the 10 amp hour one, which would provide more range than 60% of the 15 amp hour battery, and it would have cost him $300 less. So is this scheme really saving him any money? Now let's take the example of Nancy, who travels around the USA with her fully loaded Coho trailer. She rides 35 to 70 miles a day and charges her battery at night. She bought a TrailSport 750T with a 48-volt, 20 amp hour battery, which is equivalent to 960 watt-hours, and since she's a strong cyclist, she gets a range of 90 miles. If she decides to adopt the 80-20 rule, her range is reduced to 54 miles, which isn't enough for the longer days. This means that she would need to buy a second battery. In other words, she would need to buy one battery now to save the equivalent of one battery 7 to 10 years later. So it doesn't look like a good financial decision for her to adopt the restrictive way of managing her battery. If a battery is expected to last 7 years by charging it without paying attention to the charge level like most people do, with the 80-20 rule, if it really makes it last for twice as many charge cycles, it should last 14 years. So at the beginning of year 8, the expensive satiator charger would pay for itself. I'm a little skeptical about that. Maybe this assumes that e-bike owners consistently charge their battery fully and run it down completely before charging it. But that's unrealistic. Most people don't want to take the risk of running out of power, so they don't ride their bike until the battery is completely empty on a regular basis. When they say that you can get twice as many charge cycles with the 80-20 rule, they probably mean compared to discharging from 100% to 0% every time. Before ending on a negative note about 80-20, consider George's case. Like Andrew, he's buying the same bike, and he has the choice between the 15 amp hour 48 volt battery or the 10 amp hour one, or a range of approximately 50 miles or 30 miles. Like Andrew, George normally takes his bike out for short rides of 25 miles or less. The only exception is 1 week in the summer when he joins his group of friends for a week of cycling in different parts of the country. On these rides, they usually cover from 30 to 50 miles a day. For that reason, he buys the more powerful of the two batteries. All year, for the exception of this 1 week, it makes sense for him to adopt the 80-20 rule, and the only inconvenience is having to put his battery on charge more often. This way, his battery might last 10 years or more. I'd be interested in learning what you think of this. Have you been using the 80-20 rule for your electric bike? If so, tell me how many years you've had your battery, what is its capacity, how much range you get with the 80-20 rule, how many charge cycles you were able to get, and how much distance have you traveled on that battery? Thank you for watching, and remember, never quit cycling.